So once again, the date is November 28th, 2010. We are interviewing Betty Pearson for the Veterans History Project. My name is Rhiannon Jordan, and we also have Rebecca Rubin here. And we are currently in Davis, California. Mrs. Peterson was born in 1922 and served in the Marine Corps and received first lieutenant. So, Mrs. Peterson, what was your initial reaction to the war? How did you feel about it?
Well, I think that one thing that your generation needs to understand about World War II is that it's certainly unique in our experience in modern times. Every war that anyone younger than Bill and me, Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, all of those things has caused division in the country. World War II, in contrast, but because Hitler had overrun Germany, it was already, we realized about the concentration camps and what he was doing to Jews. And then the Japanese on the other side attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor. So the country came together. It was amazing because until the Japanese attack, there had been a lot of sort of America first as they were called, who believed that we could hide behind the two oceans and not get involved in world affairs. But the minute the Japanese attacked, the country came together. So there was an amazing sense of unity and singleness of purpose. Everybody pitched in and wanted to do all they could. Women left their homes and became riveters in ship factories. I was in college at the time, and of course very soon most of the boys of my age were either in the service or had enlisted and were going to graduate and then go into the service. So we were a whole generation that felt that this was our war and we had to win it, because it was as if the world as we knew it was going to be destroyed if Japan and Germany won and the United States and their allies didn't. So it was an amazing sense of we're all in this together, which I think is unique certainly in modern history in this country. So by the time I was already in college, and as soon as the war started, the colleges went on year-round schedules so that in the summertime you could take just as many courses as you could during the winter semesters. So I graduated almost a full year. I was supposed to graduate in June of 1944, and by going summer and winter, I graduated in September of 1943. And at that time, the Marine Corps and the Navy were offering commissions to anyone who had a college degree if you first passed, whatever the training was, boot camp and then officer training school. So as soon as I graduated from college, I drove to Memphis, Tennessee, which was the nearest city to where I lived in Mississippi, and talked to the Navy recruiting office and the Marine recruiting office, and chose the Marine Corps and enlisted in, I guess early October of 1943. And after Christmas I went to Camp Lejeune for basic training, boot camp as they called it, as they still call it. But in answer to your question, I was horrified when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. I'm not sure any Americans were really prepared for that. We've heard since then that people in Washington were afraid of it and did expect the Japanese to eventually attack some of our bases in the Pacific. But I think for the general American public it was a huge shock and an outrage. We were ready. I was dating a boy who went to Georgia Tech, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, And the morning after Pearl Harbor, he got in his car and drove all the way to San Francisco to enlist in the Air Force. He was that eager to get into the war. So that was sort of the spirit of the times, I think.
So the war was kind of a symbolism of unity for your generation.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think that's true.
Okay. So can you kind of go into detail about what were some of the more influential aspects of the war that you took part in?
Do you mean of the war itself?
Oh yeah, or personal experiences, like how you went through the war and what influenced you the most.
Well, in the first place, just joining the Marine Corps and leaving home, I grew up in a place that's called the Mississippi Delta, which is a flat farmland, very much like the land around Woodland and Davis, except much older. So it was a place where my family had been for 4 or 5 generations, since before the Civil War. It was very provincial. It was also very paternalistic. So for a girl of my generation, there wasn't very much freedom. There weren't very many opportunities. I knew I was going to graduate from college, but it never occurred to me that because I was a college graduate and made good grades, I could go to law school, for example, because girls just didn't do that back in those days. So getting in the Marine Corps got me away from that sort of family and cultural background to a place far away in California where no one knew me, no one knew my family. It gave me a chance to grow up and find out who I was on my own. So for me it was a wonderful experience. Of course, for the people who were in combat, it wasn't a wonderful experience, and I met many of those men who came back from the South Pacific and who had had horrible experiences. But for me, it was a very freeing experience and a time of growing up and learning what I could do on my own and all that sort of thing. And I was fortunate in that I was assigned to Marine Aviation and came to California, and our battalion had the job of, they would bring back fighter planes from the Pacific that had been in combat maybe for a couple of years. And they'd bring an aircraft carrier of those back to San Diego, and we would have the job of refitting them to send them back into combat. So, in a sense, even though I never did get overseas or into combat, I felt that it was a very important job and, very necessary. And I was able to meet a lot of pilots who had been in combat, because they came back after a certain, you'd have a tour of duty in combat and then you would come back to the States. So there were several pilots in the group who had been in combat for quite some time. So it was a very interesting and a growth time for me.
So you felt like you needed to gain sort of like an independence
Exactly.
from your family. Okay, that's very interesting.